Pope Leo XIV. Okay,
Yeah.
we're talking about Dilexi Te,
Yeah.
which I will eventually ask your impression on. I mean, I thought it was awesome, but I'm going to hold my tongue.
Okay.
I want to read to you a quote. Okay, I saw this on Instagram.
So it must be real.
Well, it was a video, which I suppose
okay.
it was,
Okay.
and it was also posted by EWTN. So I feel like
Then it's
good
probably
chance,
real. Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it was a Wednesday audience, so I don't know the context, but he was. I do believe it was the Jubilee for Youth, or I'm not totally certain. Regardless, he said this, and it moved me, and I wanted to get your reaction. This is how I want to start. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a quote, Pope Leo XIV. Do not remain fixated on your smartphones and their fleeting bursts of images. Instead, look to the sky, to the heights. Do not settle. You are made for something greater. Do not simply get along, but live. Do not let the algorithm write your story. Be authors yourselves. Use technology wisely, but do not let technology use you. Father Sam's reaction.
That's really solid. That's really solid. I like that a lot.
I feel like we have an ongoing conversation about technology use. And he basically said in 4 sentences what we've taken like 3 hours to say.
Has it only been 3 hours? Because it sometimes feels like we've belabored the point a bit. I've belabored the point. Let's say it that way. I have, it's really funny actually. So I did every day in the month of October, I did a short video that I gave to one of my staff members who handles our social media accounts.
Yeah.
And I just talked to people about praying the rosary. And very often, like, let's say 7 or 8 out of 10 times, the video would also include something like, if you're wondering if you have time to pray the rosary, you're scrolling through your phone right now. You have time. It was something like, put your phone down and go pray your rosary now. What I really want to do is just, in the month of the rosary, encourage people to pray the rosary. And I was with the high school kids yesterday, and they were telling me that they've been watching. And that they're like, yeah, Father Sam's always telling us to get off our phones, to get off social media. Yes, they get it. They're getting the message. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was very happy about that. No, I think it's a great point.
He was met with applause when he said this.
Yeah, well, in particular, don't forget. Please listen to the entire quote because it's all worth it.
Yeah, sure.
But I think really the big thing is don't let the technology use you.
Yes.
Reframe this technology. This is a tool to help me to flourish in the world that God has made. This is something that can help me to transform my experience and the experiences of others into something that glorifies God, as opposed to this is something that I'm just sucked into and it actually takes me out of the experience of really truly living.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like I'm coming across this on social media, you know, and so like I basically reached the conclusion, like this is definitive proof that the Catholic position is not that social media is bad per se, you know, like I'm receiving a papal message about wise technology use via technology, in particular social media, you know, so we can't like, I don't know, it almost like put me at ease, you know, to an extent. But I just loved that. I loved that line as well. You know, write your own story. Yeah. Look to the heights. Right.
Yeah.
Use technology wisely.
Yeah. The only thing I would say here is that this is going to be an area that the teaching of the church will continue to develop in.
Yeah. Sure.
Because as it has with in every era, like certain things, we're applying unchanging principles to changing technologies, cultures, and things like that. So applying the unchanging principles, use things responsibly for the good of others, for the building up of the kingdom of God.
Charity.
And exactly, charity above all, you know, like Caritas Suprema Lex or
right.
Yeah, anyway.
No, fair enough.
All of that, like that being true, I think there is an element of this, like, all right, perhaps social media isn't said to be definitively something that's bad, but depends on how the social media technology develops. If it continues to develop in a negative direction, then I think we'll see a more forceful statement.
Right. Totally.
Whereas so long as this is a technology that can still be used for the good, then we use it for the good. We aim it at the right cause. We remember the purpose of the human person.
Yeah.
And in remembering that purpose, that telos, that entire reason for being, then we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
That's a solid quote. I like that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, like, I actually have considered. I mean, I only came across it the other day, but I think I'm gonna I think I'll type it out and print it out and like put it somewhere in the office, right? Because it is something that I need daily reminding on, because I work on, in some way, shape, or form, a social media often. Like, it's a huge piece of my job. So, okay. But cool to receive the leadership of the Pope in that domain. Very cool.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. Dilexi Te.
Yeah.
What are your first impressions?
I want your first impressions. I don't want to give mine first.
Yeah, no, I can. So I thought it was I thought it was incredibly bold. That was what I walked. I walked away feeling really challenged. Because there are so like the document does detail examples from the lives of the saints, and that is so, like, obviously I desire to be a saint, and I mean this in the humblest way possible when I say that I desire to be a great saint, and I say the humblest way possible because, like, there's like in a weird way I think pride can get infused, but it shouldn't ever prevent someone from wanting to be a great saint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So, like, for the right reasons. And the corporal works of mercy are, I don't know if this is something that maybe you can weigh in on, but I think like almost like culturally we're not great at it, or at least we're, and that's why I'm saying weigh in, because it could just be a me thing, and I don't want it to to throw myself under the bus too many times in this single episode. But so I felt convicted of my own need to perform more of the corporal works of mercy, and not just because almost in a sense of justice, so not just like this is a good thing to do and it's extra, but rather this is the Christian life, and if you're not doing it, you're not living the Christian life fully. And so I was really moved by how boldly charity was put forth as an act of justice. Charity meaning like love of the poor, not the virtue, although there's obviously some crossover here.
Okay.
So what do you think of that? I mean, I was actually gonna wait to bring that up until later, but I brought it up. So why don't we just start there?
Well, I'm glad to hear you describe what you mean by bold.
Yeah.
That this boldness in particular applies to charity, and I think you've got the right read here on how Pope Leo is describing the importance of those corporal works of mercy, but also how I think he's highlighting something that the church has always understood, and he does this a few times. There's a few points in Dilexi Te where he says that this isn't about welfare. This isn't about just like leaving this to the state to provide relief. This is the reminder that every Christian is responsible for practicing charity. And at the same time, part of charity is working to, let's say, create the culture in which charity is a natural virtue that flows from everything that we do. And I think I want to use that phrase, like create the culture, as opposed to, forgive me for this, I don't think I'm bigger than the Pope or anything like that, but there's a certain phrasing of like structures of sin or structural stuff that sometimes that language of structure, I'm going to say it like this. That's not the Leo part of this apostolic exhortation.
Right. So, and that's probably worth explicating at the very beginning, which is we know.
I want to come back to
by
right. I want to come back to your statement that it was bold, because my first thought was no, it's not. My first thought was to contradict you, but the way that you explained what you mean by this is the thing that was bold, actually, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But as far as like the overall document, it's an apostolic exhortation that is, I didn't find it especially bold. And as such, it was actually kind of a great entree here. Like, here's the first major document. It's an apostolic exhortation, which in the rankings of papal magisterium and the different ways that popes can speak, the apostolic constitution and encyclical are the top ones. And then apostolic or pastoral letters, apostolic exhortations, pastoral letters, etc. Like, they're important, but they tend to be more of like a, hey, I just want to encourage you. So here's an encouragement to charity. Here's an encouragement to remember how much taking care of the poor is very much at the heart of who we are as Christians. Because it's a reminder of that, there's nothing really new that the Pope is saying here.
No.
Right? He's not saying it. Now, what I did appreciate here is, if you are looking for an outstanding summary of what Scripture, the tradition of the church, the theology of the church, and the great figures of the church have said or done regarding charity, Dilexi Te gives you a phenomenal listing of all of it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But as such, it reads more as like a summary. Here's a summary of things. There's not like any new teaching here, and it's not to be expected, I don't think. So I don't say that as a criticism. It's more just a reality that this does not give a whole lot in the way of new teaching. It very much is a Francis document. As you read it, what you're gonna notice that the language, the style, even the content, it's very much the style of Pope Francis. And sort of in those places that were unfinished, you see that there's a few spots where Leo kind of jumps in and says, this is what Francis taught about this, or this is something that Francis said, and I'm just going to kind of add to this my own thought, maybe here at the end, or just to kind of preface this with my own thought. 100% the section where he talks about St. Augustine, that was all Leo the 14th. There's no way. Maybe he did. Maybe I should extend the possibility. Maybe Francis included something about St. Augustine, but I think that this is going to be the hallmark of a Leo document, and that's not my original thought. I've read that more than once. It's not going to be a document from Leo the 14th unless there's reference to Augustine, and I don't blame him. He's an Augustinian,
right?
So he's as he said, what, the second or third day of his pontificate, he said, "I am a son of St. Augustine." So he's thoroughly schooled in this. It's going to be everywhere. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So, okay. Not bold because it is presenting teaching we've already received. Like, it's presenting, is it fair to say recapitulating the gospel? And fair enough. But so you agree that it was bold insofar as, like, that's why I was saying it could have just been personal conviction. You know what I mean? It hit me hard.
Yeah, I think there's a bold push for charity, and for remembering that we need to that this has both personal, ecclesial, and societal implications. This charity that we're called to, bold because we don't live in a world where that charity is as automatic as it could be. Also, because we're living in a world where we're actually. And this might be worth some serious reflection. I don't really know the reason for this, but if you think about some of the charitable things that the saints of old have done, the way that they took care of things, we don't do that as quickly anymore. At least not in certain places. You might.
Do you have a particular example in mind?
Yeah, I do. Famously, you'll see that in developing countries, when the church is present. With schools, with hospitals, with clinics, with outreach to the poor, to those who have less, the structures are stripped down. Very simple. I don't mean the physical buildings. I mean the things that they're doing. It's like, here in this particular location, there's sick people. And so here are the missionaries of charity taking care of sick people in this building. Here's this place where there's people who are hungry, and there's somebody standing there feeding them. You bring that to the United States, and it's like, well, did you get a health code certificate to feed these hungry people?
Right.
We have a lot of other things that layer on. Now, those things, insurance policies as an example.
Yeah, right.
An insurance policy is meant to protect the organization so that the organization can do the work that it's supposed to do. So here we've got this insurance policy so that everybody is kept safe, so that our liability is limited on these different things. But sometimes that mentality and that way of thinking actually gets in the way of the practice of charity. Well, we can't do that because we need to have this kind of approval. We need this permit. We need to make sure that our insurance covers us for this, instead of like the very simple, this person is in need. I think sometimes in the West, and this is a very broad generality, and as such, it may not really apply in every situation, but I think very often in the West especially, we'll look pragmatically at certain things. Here's a person who is in need, and I find them. You might see this happen at a church. I find somebody sleeping on the steps of the church. If I'm a pastor of a big city parish, here's this person sleeping on the steps of the church. Once upon a time, you might have brought them inside.
Right.
And said, here's a spot where you can sleep inside. You don't have to sleep outside. Now, I would say there's probably a lot of priests who would be really hesitant to do that, not because they lack charity, not for lack of love for that poor person, but because they don't know how to do that in a way that is safe. They don't know how to do that in a way that doesn't put them at some risk. And so whatever movement of charity there might be in their heart is sort of tempered by this pragmatic uncertainty, by this desire for safety. And like that becomes a really difficult space to navigate. Now, I'm not saying that justifies a lack of charity. I'm not saying that any of that, but it creates something where you go, yeah, it's not as simple. There is a simplicity to that charity. And sometimes we need to be more willing to dive into the simplicity of charity. This is a person who's in need. Full stop. That's the whole story. As opposed to, let me think through, how can I carefully negotiate this, or like just finesse the whole thing so that my needs are also met while this person's needs are met. Like sometimes we just need the simplicity of charity, but unfortunately, I don't think our reality is that simple.
So I mean, okay. So I'm really glad this is where we went. This is where I actually wanted to spend a bulk of our conversation on things like this, right? The practicals of it.
Yeah.
Because, oh man, where to start? Okay. I agree with you. I don't think it's that simple, or at least like, heck, if it's that simple, like, I need some purification in my life. But here's why. Okay. Cause like on the one hand, I was talking to my brother-in-law about this too, that, like, I think in the media, and you tell me your thoughts. I think in the media, there has been almost like a demonizing of the poor, And what I mean by the media isn't like news outlets, although maybe there too, right? But like we've like somewhere messages got sent that like this person's living on the street. That's because I don't know, like insert a bad storyline here. They did drugs, or they weren't able to hold down a job because they stole, or insert X here. And like that's just like 100% not always the case. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's not sometimes the case, right? But it's not the case 100% of the time. People fall on hard times. It happens, right? And sometimes it's not even their fault, right? And even if it is their fault, it's not because they did something terrible always, right? Maybe they made a mistake, whatever it is. So I think that there's this like, there's almost like a fear surrounding poverty that a lot of people encounter. But at the same time, I don't disagree with you, right? Like, because I have actually, like, I have said to myself, like I was listening to a gospel reflection today, and Jesus says, like, when you throw a banquet, don't invite.
That's the gospel today. Yeah, as we record.
Right, like, don't invite. Yeah, you say it because you know it.
He says, don't invite the rich, your friends, your neighbors, the people who can pay you back. He says, invite the poor, the lame, the crippled, the people who have no way to pay you back. Invite them and expect nothing in return.
Right.
And there's tremendous value to that. Yeah.
Totally. And so I say to myself, like, okay, realistically speaking, how comfortable am I inviting a total stranger into my house? I have a wife and 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
Not super comfy, you know? Not super comfortable with that idea. But yet, right? The person that I believe is the God of the universe has instructed me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not suggested, and that's an important distinction, So like, how do I balance these? How do I integrate,
Yeah.
Prudence, and because I also believe God has called me to prudence, right? And like a selfless, courageous, or otherwise put fearless charity.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you easy questions today.
Yeah, no, you're getting into something that's really important here. I guess before I go to that, I would just say that we should go back to the heart of what's happening in Dilexi Te.
Okay.
This is an apostolic exhortation to care for the poor.
Yeah.
So start there, right? This is about caring for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not programmatic.
Right.
And as you read it, what you're going to see is that Pope Leo, Pope Francis, whoever can claim authorship over this, they're not laying out a plan that says this is the correct Catholic approach to caring for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's because the Catholic Church spread throughout the world is going to have different interactions with poverty.
Yeah.
And indeed, this exhortation is able to identify different forms that poverty takes.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's different forms of poverty require a different response. But those different responses are going to be conditioned by time, place, and the person responding. Right?
Yeah, vocation.
Yeah, exactly. A response to the poor is going to look different from the guy who works to run a soup kitchen compared to the guy on his way to a meeting who happens to bump into a poor person near the soup kitchen.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean that both men are not called to respond with charity. It does not mean that both men are not called to some form of care for the poor, but the way that they care for them is going to look different. Like, actually, Saturday Night Live has done a skit about this, I think.
This is like the third week in a row.
I know. They've done like a skit
SNL
about this where,
has shed light on the gospel for us. Okay.
Somebody like wanting to be like trying to be charitable and then like taking this homeless person in off the street, doing all these things for them, spending all this money on them and everything. And it's supposed to be, how beautiful to want to be charitable, but maybe somebody just needs to put their feet on the ground here first and decide, is this the prudent thing for me to do? So you as a father with children in your house, it may not be prudent to bring people into your home.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's a legitimate concern that you should have. But that doesn't mean that you are entitled to slam the door or to treat people without charity, right?
Yeah.
The call, and this is the universal call that is given in every era and in every moment, that's why this exhortation exists, is we must care for the poor.
Yeah.
So we've got to figure that out for ourselves. So in that way, this isn't programmatic. So that's the first thing. I think you're right that there is a certain way in which sometimes the poor are depicted as it's their fault or there's some problem. The call, and if you notice how Jesus encounters the poor, he never asks them why they are poor. Or he never presumes why they are poor. Rather, he encounters them and invites them into the conversation. Here's what's going on. So it's not for us to decide for ourselves why this person is in the situation that they're in. Mm-hmm. I don't need to say that they're irresponsible or that they're an addict or that they're whatever else it might be. But part of charity is actually finding out. part of charity is encountering them in the poverty to say what has happened in your life, because sometimes that's the poverty. The poverty isn't that I have no money. The poverty isn't that I have no one to care for me. The poverty is that I've so isolated myself over the years, or the poverty is that I'm lonely. The poverty is, it could be that the poverty is I have addictions, and I have addictions for the following reasons. The poverty could be I've been mistreated in the following ways. There's all kinds of different reasons. But if we can enter into why that person is poor, then we're doing something really good for them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like the basis of accompaniment, right? Like that's I know that's like a a piece of jargon that's incredibly popular at the moment, right? That's like alive in the church right now. But like fundamentally, accompaniment must begin with the question of like, tell me about yourself.
Well, so just like there's sort of that prejudice that you noted about the poor or about poverty. I think the opposite extreme might be sort of a totemism.
Okay.
That was the word that came to mind as you started talking about it. Like the opposite extreme from we're gonna presume to know and to give the narrative for why this population is poor. There can also be sort of a totemizing where like
a totemizing.
Yeah, so like a totem, something like sacred. Right?
Okay.
Something that we hold up
TOTEM.
as yeah.
Okay.
So there can be a way that we just decide that this is the thing, and anybody who falls into the category of poverty is beyond reproach. Anybody who doesn't do something for the poor is therefore guilty of dishonoring the sacred totem, right? And there's, again, this is a lot of this has to do with the way that we're using media and language and the way that things are reported. A great example, I think, though, and it's a hot button issue. I'm not trying to wade into the hot button issue stuff.
Do it.
The word migration.
Yeah.
When you use that word, it suddenly becomes this thing of either we should have firm borders and nobody's allowed in, or it is absolutely unjust to ever tell somebody who's in a car driving that they shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like anybody who's from another place has an absolute irrefutable right to be wherever they want to be.
Yeah.
And neither of those approaches is really going to be all that healthy or Catholic, right?
No.
So if we totemize it, then the migrant has more rights than anybody else.
Right.
And they're the ones who are most likely to be wronged. And then you add whatever other, as Francis would say, the existential peripheries. And I think, again, this part of my issue with that kind of language is there's a way that it can be so easily exploited and abused. Here's the existential periphery. Look, I could be an existential periphery. We've actually even talked about it. Like during the last 12 years, priests are often the ones who have felt that within the church we're the existential periphery, right? But by no standard do I fall into a category that says, "Oh, I'm on the periphery. Right. I'm poor." There's no standard in which that exists, right?
Right.
Now I should try to do the Beatitudes version of being poor. I should be poor in spirit. I should be ready to give away everything that I own. I shouldn't be attached to material things. So I want to aim for that, but I don't think anybody's going to look at me and say that I classify as one of the poor that's being spoken of in these kinds of images, right?
No, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but
yeah, there's I think it's a really important thing not to fall into either of the extremes. That like the poor are always a threat, or the poor could never possibly be wrong.
Right, sure.
Poverty
Although there's a piece of that document that says like, this also moved me. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
Right, there's another piece of the document that says something. It's not an exact quote, just to be clear. You know this, but so our listeners know. It basically says like, don't judge the poor. To an extent it says don't judge the poor, right? Like if they are doing something, right? Like be incredibly cautious when you make a judgment on their action that is like it's a bad action, right? And I was talking to Renee about this, and I was like, Renee, I was like, when I'm hungry, I was like, I am the worst. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the worst. And I was like, and I want to be very clear here. I'm never really hungry. You know, I'm never actually hungry. Like, we are
Yeah.
blessed to have access to food whenever we want it,
Right.
you know? And so that idea of like, okay, like let's throw someone in the category of true hunger, meaning like they don't have access to food for 24 hours against their will. Well, if they do something like steal a loaf of bread, you know, not to go all Les Mis on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like don't make a judgment there, you know? Don't
Right.
make the judgment there about them committing, you know, stealing. I don't even know if actually it would qualify for that word, because like clearly it's an extreme circumstance, you know? And so like almost like the invitation to mercy was also like, again, to me it was bold. Like the reason I'm using bold is because I was just so edified by the willingness to say something like that, you know, to say like, don't you
Well,
judge them, you know, like,
yeah.
you know, like,
But right there, you're actually getting at why it's bold, because
yeah,
it's bold not because it's saying something new,
yes,
but because it's saying
exactly,
something that these extremes that we're talking about don't allow.
yeah, exactly,
And unfortunately, this is where I think the Pope's voice can be so helpful in our
yeah,
public discourse.
yeah,
And it's also why I've said this for a very long time. We should go and read what the popes actually say.
sure,
It's
sure,
really important. Read the text of the homily. It's really important. Read the actual text of what the Pope wrote, because especially secular news outlets, they will quote the Pope according to what's convenient for them.
oh, no
This
doubt,
fits the narrative nicely. One of the headlines that I've seen recently is like, well, Pope Leo said this about caring for the poor, and therefore he's confusing American conservatives. It's like, well, only if you assume that every time the Pope speaks, he only has in mind the American economic system
right.
and the way of conducting business in the United States.
Yeah,
If you don't understand the Pope to be speaking pretty globally now, and this is also where I think the Pope needs to be careful, and this is also not my original thought. This is Ed Condon at the Pillar. He said,
shout
like,
out to the Pillar,
love the Pillar.
love the Pillar,
Yeah, we're pillar readers in a good way. He says the Pope shouldn't be giving interviews or press conferences. And I wholeheartedly agree, because it's way too easy for certain things to be connected to something in a way that they're not meant to be, or to be interpreted in this light. Look, we knew from the beginning the narrative of an American Pope was going to be, how does the Pope respond to Trump? And that's the wrong way to try to read Pope Leo. That's the wrong way to try to read a Pope. And I would say in the, I don't want to say the opposite, but like in another way, it would also be the wrong way for the Pope to Pope. If his main concern was like, let me respond to this individual world leader every time they make a decision, and let me act as though this is the violation of church teaching or something like that. Like that's not going to work either. The Pope's job is to confirm the brethren in the faith, first and foremost, right? Then to proclaim the gospel to the world. So there may be times when it's necessary for the Pope to proclaim this is what the church teaches. But an apostolic exhortation, keep in mind, is an exhortation to observe what the church already says. There's nothing, there's no new teaching here. Dilexi Te doesn't break any new ground theologically or pastorally or anything.
No.
He does identify some stuff that these are like current concerns.
Yeah.
But he's not saying anything that the church hasn't already. That's why it's such a great summary of what the church says, of what the scripture commands, of the way that the word of God has told us how to take care of the poor, of the way that the church is teaching, and theologians and the great fathers of the church, the great saints of the church. They've all done something with this, but it is not primarily an exposition of some new teaching or the identification of a program for how to be charitable. That's just not what it is.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Extending the practical conversation, right? as I was reading it, again, being convicted, I was like, okay, so should I like sell my TV, like and give the money to the poor, right? Should I mean that's what Jesus says to the rich young man, right? The rich young ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Go sell your belongings, give it to the poor and follow me. So it's like, okay. And like understanding that you've already given an answer in like prudence, right? Fair enough, right? But where does what is prudence, almost like where's the line for prudence? And my guess at it would be like, well, how are these objects, insert whatever they are, right? Television, car. Obviously, like we need a car, we happen to own a Honda, right? If you own a Mercedes, should you own a Honda instead? You know what I mean? Like, so insert any kind of luxury item, and understanding that my guess at prudence would be like, well, how is this building up the kingdom in your family? How is it helping you to live out the life of a Christian, in your vocation and in your occupation and in your community, etc. Right? But like, where do you think the line is?
Well, I would look at the story of the rich young man. What's the thing that's the obstacle for the rich young man to following Jesus wholeheartedly and to living out the law of charity? It's that he has many possessions. It's the many possessions that he's worried about. He can follow the commandments. He's like, he doesn't need to grow in virtue. He doesn't need to give up bad habits of sin. He knows how to do all that. He has followed the commandments since his youth. He's well versed in how to live virtuously, how to live a morally upright life. But he has all these possessions, and with that attachment to the possessions, that's the thing that's holding him back from going with Jesus. And that's also the thing that's holding him back from acting as Jesus wants him to act. Jesus wants us to be charitable. He wants us to be of service to others. So he says, sell what you have and give to the poor. You don't need these things.
Right.
These aren't the things that are really helping you. So if we look at our lives and say, what's my obstacle? What's the thing that's holding me back? It may not be a material possession, right? But if owning this type of car or having this thing that's become my totem, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
That's my sacred object.
Right. That's
the thing that I've attached, if not as much significance to, a similar level of significance to as I do to my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? For some people, the thing might be, I need to get rid of television. Right. And the way for me to do that is to sell the TV and donate the money to charity, donate the money to the poor, or just literally hand out cash to poor people that I encounter.
Right.
That might be the thing that they need to do in order to make the break with the thing that was holding them back in their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always going to be at that level. Now there's the Franciscan style, and I mean St. Francis of Assisi, he reads that, go sell what you have, give to the poor, and then come follow me. And he says, then I will have no possessions at all.
Right.
But he's called in a very particular way to that kind of poverty, right?
Right.
But for most of us, it's about
which the father of a family is definitively not called to that form.
Exactly. And so it's really important to understand that material things in themselves are not evil. In the same way that we could say, like these material things are not evil, we can also say that money is not the evil thing in itself, although that love for money, that disordered desire, that greed, it is the root of all evil in some way, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? There's also a way in which, money allows me to buy the things that I need to sustain my family, to sustain my own body, right? Also, the fact that I have money gives me a way that I can practice generosity with others. I can give money to people who need it because I have money that I can give to them. I might not have much money, but there's a way that I can practice generosity.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, right? Like, this is why I kept using that word bold. Like, it's a challenge. I don't know a single person who I mean, this just shows how small my social circle is, right? Who wouldn't be challenged by this idea, like, right. Okay. So
here's the thing. I still I'm with you on the idea that this is bold.
yeah.
As much as I at first was like, it's not bold. This is just a rehashing of what the church has always taught. That's how I was thinking of it. But
Right.
when you put it into this context of he's saying something that's hard for the world to hear, then it's bold because we don't like saying things that challenge people too much.
No.
It's easier to just let people be happy with everything that you say.
Yeah.
It's just much easier. And so because there's the risk here of misinterpretation, I think that's a huge thing that Leo is going to face throughout his pontificate.
Yeah.
There's the risk of misinterpretation or oversimplification. Like there's the risk of him saying, and I think actually, I think Francis, and I do worry that Leo will fall into this as well. Mm-hmm. I think they fell into Francis, I think, definitely fell into this oversimplification, especially of the issue of migration.
Okay.
He's quoted in Dilexi Te as saying, like, one of the dispositions has to be welcome. And he doesn't, it's at least here, that what welcome means is not especially nuanced.
Sure.
And there's a way to nuance that actually is completely in keeping with the teaching of the church. People have a right to move. It's true. The church is clear and definitive about this. People are not bound to remain in one place if that place is dangerous or unhealthy for them.
Right.
And at the same time, a state has the right to govern its laws and its borders and to determine how people can come and go. So there's also this simultaneous right that exists. And I think expressing that, sometimes you oversimplify.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. But what does welcome mean? Does welcome mean that I say, come on in, here's a house and a job? Or does welcome mean I'm going to make sure that you are fed and clothed and have shelter, but at the same time, you've got to go through a process for coming into this country? This is where, like, the question of prudential judgment and the intricacies of every situation actually need to be explored. And that's not what Dilexi Te is about. That's not what an apostolic exhortation is for. Mm-hmm. But this is meant to exhort us to that sense of charity that says, let's look at the particulars of how we deal with poverty. So for me, I'm in Fairfield, Connecticut. Let me think about how I, in Fairfield, Connecticut, deal with poverty. What are the kinds of poverty that I see around me? What are the kinds of poverty that I might need to be more willing to face, more willing to turn towards? What are some of the places where I've avoided dealing with the poverty that exists around here? And then what are the ways that as a community, we can create that culture that responds to the poverty within our community and then looks out at the poverty that exists in the world? And there's a way that, look, it's Fairfield. It would be real easy in Fairfield to say there's no poverty.
Yeah.
But there is.
Yeah.
It would be real easy in Fairfield to say, well, we've got what we need, and so we'll just make sure that we stay in this little bubble of everything's fine. It would also be really easy to say, every place else has this huge problem. We've got to look outside of our town borders, and we never look at the people who are poor right in front of us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? So all of this is meant to be that thing that says, what exactly is your definition of charity? Yeah. Does your definition of charity include your own home? Does your definition of charity extend beyond your wallet? Does your definition of charity include people who are right around you? Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm. Right, especially when you consider that even before what is your definition of charity, the very beginning of Dilexi Te says we need to define poverty with all of these different things, right?
Yeah.
So like poverty within your home could look like, you are a mother or father and your teenage son or daughter is like, struggling morally, like they talk about moral poverty or spiritual poverty, or I don't think he
Emotional
used the
poverty.
phrase. Yeah.
They
I
could
don't
be
think he used
struggling
the
with
phrase
their mental
educational
health.
poverty, but right. Yes, exactly.
No,
like
he does get at educational poverty too, at the reality.
I just don't know if he called it that. That's all I know.
Yeah, but he talks about how part of helping people to grow is it's integral growth. It's not just about providing material needs. It's also giving them the tools, helping them to grow in virtue, and that's a huge piece. Like we need to teach virtue. It's also, I was actually talking with somebody the other day about this. Like we have this weird double standard, right? So we started talking about the World Series, and think about how sports gambling has become this ubiquitous thing within the sports world. But we're also still scandalized when there's gambling.
Yeah.
So there's rules about not gambling, but all the major sports leagues take money from these gambling outlets so that they can advertise.
Right.
Well, there's a problem there. There's another one where there's I don't know who it is, but somebody who is like on the commercials for one of the sports betting apps, who has also talked about the need to like really reduce addictions for people. But he's advertising a gambling outlet, and gambling is a major source of addiction for people. Right. There's a way that we sometimes are logically contradictory. I am all the time. Right. I don't say this as a like.
I mean, you don't have to
condemnation of the world.
I already knew that.
But like, I'll say one thing and do the other, or like, I say, well, this is what we've got to do, and I completely miss that I've been kind of blind to this. It's what's the TV the product on TV that's talking about like when you go nose blind to things? Is it Febreze? Sometimes you're nose blind to certain smells, and like you need somebody else to come in and be like, you stink. Oh, time to change my deodorant, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I like this way of phrasing it, right? That you go blind to certain things. You do one thing, you do you say one thing, you do the opposite, right? Because a good portion of Dilexi Te is James chapter 2. Faith without works is dead. And I was also very moved by that, and I think that, I mean, funny enough, right? Like that's like name a more often quoted piece of scripture for apologetics, and it's like,
right.
I mean, talk about like, it's like the verse, if you're looking at apologetics. I think maybe particularly within an American standpoint, just because of the various denominations in our country, but like somehow along the lines, I think maybe for myself, right? Like it became, and this is a danger, right? So, again, not to, examine my conscience on the air, but like, you have to make sure that when you're reading scripture, things aren't just like proof texts and instead are personal convictions, and like, man, faith without works is dead, like, and there's a particular paragraph here. It's only like 2 sentences, so I'm going to read it. It says, at times Christian movements or groups have arisen which show little or, nope, that's the wrong one. Just kidding, it's 113, not 112. Indeed, any church community, if it thinks it can comfortably go its own way without creative concern and effective cooperation in helping the poor to live with dignity and reaching out to everyone, will also risk breaking down, however much it may talk about social issues or criticize governments. It will easily drift into spiritual worldliness, camouflaged by religious practices, unproductive meetings, and empty talk. And I think that's spiritual worldliness. That's the saying one thing and doing the other. Like,
yeah.
Because when I read that,
that comes from Evangelii Gaudium, which is of Pope Francis's writings. I think that's probably one of the better ones, and that was from 2013. So it's funny. That's a quote, what you just read, that's in Dilexi Te, but it's quoting Evangelii Gaudium.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I read mine on a paper tablet, so it was really hard to check where the footnotes were. I know that's not a good enough reason.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. Yeah. maybe we can start heading into some closing thoughts on Dilexi Te here.
Okay.
Because my thought is, first off, it's a good quote to remember, that we can easily drift into a spiritual worldliness we're basically imitating the way the world speaks.
Right.
And I think that this is it's a danger if we try speaking as a church. So this is a very broad statement about life in the church. But if we try speaking too much in the language of the political, in the language of secular governments, even in the language of like the UN. I'm not going to lie. I'm never happy when the United Nations is mentioned in an ecclesial document.
Okay,
fair enough. It just doesn't make me happy because I think the United Nations is sort of a nice idea, but there's something somewhat symbolic about it. Now, I know that there's more to the UN than that, but and I know there's good that comes from it. I'm not debating that.
No,
that's not the point here. But there's just something about it that's like, but we're not the UN. And there's this weird tension where, like, Pope Francis would say that the church is not another NGO. The church is not just some social organization that provides welfare. And then at the same time, you'd have Francis saying like, well, it's good that the UN is doing this. We've got to do things in accord with the UN Climate Accord or something like that. And you're like, well, which is it? Are we an NGO or not? So in that way, it's like, yeah, this balancing that we need to do, we need to be on guard as a church always against falling into that spiritual worldliness where we use religious language to advance a political ideology or to do something that's more secular than religious, or we're just going to give sort of a religious veneer to this secular agenda. We've got to be careful of that.
Yeah, and it's also like, because I also interpreted it as spiritual worldliness is like either saying you believe and not acting like it, or acting like it and like, but not really, like that not really being why you're doing it, right? Like the faith isn't actually the reason. Bishop Caggiano on Let Me Be Frank reacted to Dilexi Te. Listen to me. I spend too much time on YouTube apparently. But you know, reflected on it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is awesome, you know? Repeatedly said like, we are not like he said, we live in a world where our neighbor will happily help his neighbor, you know? Because like just American culture is one where like, you know, all the things about the poor aside, it's like, you know, if you need someone to jump your car and I see you, like, I'll help you jump your car, you know, as an example, right? But like, am I doing that, you know, that act of charity because like I believe Jesus has called me to it, you know? Or am I just being like polite and friendly, you know? And so there's like a lot of philanthropic action that is not done because the gospel is true. You know, like secular humanism exists. And I think a lot of people have bought into it. And so one thing he was saying was like, when people say, well, why are you doing this? Like, we have to be unafraid to be like, because I believe that Jesus Christ is the Lord of the universe, you know, and I am loving him by loving you, you know, which is not to say that it's not an act of love towards you. Of course not, right? Like both these things exist simultaneously, you know, but faith is very true. Like there are very charitable atheists, you know what I mean?
Right.
But what's the difference between my charity and their charity?
Yeah. And there's such a thing as natural virtue. And natural virtue makes it possible for us to live the supernatural virtues.
Totally,
and then
totally. Grace builds on nature. No argument, you know? Like
when we talk about the habit of virtue, so a habit of charity, a habit of generosity, that may mean that I'm doing this almost out of habit. I'm helping this person who's in need because it's a habit. I'm holding the door for this person because manners and social etiquette has taught me that this is good. But that doesn't diminish the fact that I might hold the virtue of charity and I want to be generous to this person as well. It's in this moment, I'm holding the door almost by instinct. The door is about to close and I heard somebody say, hold the door. And so I grab the door and I hold it open. it's just an instant response. It's not an intentional response. Not everything always has to be intentional. In fact, it's the fact that I have the virtue that allows me to do that in the moment without needing to reflect and say, well, how could I be more loving towards Christ in this moment?
Right.
No, I just grab the door, right? So there's that, that sort of constant back and forth with it. The other thing that I find here is, again, coming back to this idea that the Apostolic Exhortation Dilexi Te, it's nothing new. The Holy Father hasn't said anything here that hasn't been said before by many others, most especially that hasn't already been said in God's holy word, sacred scripture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's giving us, it's a great summary.
Yeah.
In that way, it's not for me personally, it's not especially inspiring because it's...
I thought you were going to say bold.
No, it's like, this isn't like changing my life.
Talk about saying one thing and doing the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is not a document that's making me like revisit all of my priorities or that's giving me some new insight into how I can talk about poverty or what charity is really about. But that said, there is nothing here that makes me go, well, that's wrong.
Yeah,
Everything that he says here, this all makes sense to me. This is all clearly on solid ground, and it makes so much sense. So in that way, it's a great reminder. And really, that's what an exhortation is meant to do. Hey, a reminder that charity is really needed. And he is identifying, Pope Leo, that this is a moment in which charity is needed. We're living in a historical moment when that kind of charity is really needed. Yeah. All right. The last thing I would say is I think that we are still looking to find out what the voice of Pope Leo is.
Yeah.
Right? It's early yet in his pontificate. We're seeing certain things. I can't wait to talk to Chris Altieri about his book about Pope Leo. But there's some things here that, this particular document does not yet give us the real voice of Leo. I think that Dilexi Te operates, in terms of understanding Pope Leo, it operates too much under the burden of being a document that was really written by Pope Francis, that was in the works that Leo finished. Now, the Pillar does a whole thing. Larry Chapp actually on Catholic World Report did a great expose on this. That's the wrong exposition, I suppose. Explaining that there's
exegesis, maybe.
Yeah, exposition. That there's a long tradition of
Exodus. No, I'm kidding.
of a pope, a new pope coming in and taking the work that was on his predecessor's desk.
Sure. Yes.
And finishing it and just adding his name to it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that it's like an homage almost to the predecessor. And it's a nice way of saying
expresses a real level of continuity.
Yeah, and here's the last thing that you were working on. And obviously, because we are one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, we stand on the shoulders of the apostles and the martyrs who have gone before us. It's this recognition that this teaching, it's real, and there's nothing wrong. We don't go administration to administration. We are not the American political system. Right. And so taking something that the predecessor had begun and finishing it is a very normal act in the life of the church. So this idea, it makes a lot of sense. But there is a certain Francis style of writing. And the Francis style of writing, if I'm just going from a writing style perspective, if I'm an editor, it's way too wordy. Everything that you say here, Francis, you could say in way fewer words. Like, you don't need that many sentences. And most people would say the same thing about the tangent, let's be honest.
Yeah. Like we said at the beginning of this episode. Pope Leo XIV summed up in about 3 sentences what we've spoken about for hours.
Yeah, we can belabor a point with the best of them, and I'm okay with that. But there's a certain, if you look at the history of papal writing, papal writings tend to be relatively short, relatively direct, relatively simple, unambiguous. John Paul II kind of changed that with his style because he's so much a philosopher. But what that meant was that there was a depth of writing that was coming out and a depth of teaching that John Paul II was articulating. And then you have Ratzinger, Benedict XVI, already this well-established, well-written, well-received extensively published theologian who becomes pope, and his style is already firmly established. Like, you're not going to see much of a difference from a document published under the name Benedict XVI and a book written by Joseph Ratzinger. You're going to see a continuity of thinking. You're going to see a consistency in style and the way that he wrote. It's just him, and it comes out really clearly. Nobody knew how Francis wrote, and so the Francis style is in stark contrast, I think, to John Paul II and Benedict XVI. With that contrast comes, like, there's a lot of just extra stuff, and you're kind of wondering why is there so much here when this could all be said in a simpler way. Part of that, I'm not going to lie, this is my own formation, so I blame the seminary for this. I read so much John Paul II, so much Benedict XVI, so much Ratzinger as a seminarian that I got used to papal writings being like, can't miss. You must read this. This is the greatest thing that you're ever going to read. And everything seemed like it was wonderful. I was spoiled.
Right. Yeah.
But I think, like, that's why I'm excited to see what's Leo's style.
Yeah.
What's his writing style really like? We're going to get it. We're going to start to see it. We're already seeing some of the unique personality of the man. We're seeing some of the ways that he's doing things. Again, that's why I can't wait to talk to Chris about it. But there's also like this one, I don't have any objections to it. Nothing bad.
That's
good to be reminded of that need for charity, but
what a relief.
It's stylistically it's too much of the Francis writing style, which I think is just overly wrought.
Right. Fair enough. Well, there you go, folks. Father Sam and I, we have we had different reactions to Dilexi Te.
That's a bold take, Matt.
We both thought it was bold. Okay, we both thought it was bold.
In different ways.
From different directions.
For different reasons,
Yeah. I will say this. It did get me excited to read his works. You know, I know that, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I haven't read nearly as much of Benedict, John Paul II, or Pope Francis as you have, right? But I was able to identify the writing styles. But regardless, this was the first thing that came from Pope Leo, and he is like we had talked about when he was elected. This is like the first time I'm getting to see a pope from start to finish. Hopefully, God willing. And so it made me incredibly excited. Wow, oh man, And so I think there's something about that too, like that just novelty of I get to follow from the start. So anyway, I think we've hit our closing thoughts. So if you haven't read Dilexi Te, Father Sam would say, don't bother. No, I'm joking. You should 100% read it. I think it's personally convicting. I think you ended up saying that as well for why it's bold. It's the gospel. It's a summary of the gospel. How could it not be bold?
That's right.
That's the opposite of what the world preaches, right? So,
and if you want to understand anything that Pope Leo says or does beyond the headlines, if you want to understand it beyond the soundbite or beyond the pull quote that whatever media outlet you're reading has pulled, go and read the full document, the full homily, the full interview, whatever it is. Go read the whole thing. You'll always get a fuller picture of what he really meant.
Dare I say, if you want to understand Vatican II, read the documents.
Yeah, it's this weird idea. I know it's insane.
Yeah. All right. Father Sam, I will see you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
I look forward to it.
Peace, buddy.
Peace.